All right, hi everyone. Name's Ripple. For this presentation, I'm just going to be talking about learning and mentality in the early set. So we're all here to be signed up for a program for like this whole set to learn. That's like 3 months, so it's kind of a long time. It's easy to like kind of get burnt out on playing a bunch, studying a bunch. So I'm just going to talk about like how I like to approach learning the game and the mentality I take into the game and into learning. That's kind of helped me do well. Just some background. Um, Me as a player, I got to the final lobby at the Paris Open just this last year. I've been to the America's regional finals 7 times. Reset, I get to like 1500 LP, and usually I do this with like a below average game count, probably like 300 games or something. A lot of people around me have like hundreds of more games, and I've also coached masters to or players to masters, GM, and challenger. And I think a lot of it has to do with like talking about not just like mistakes that you make in the game and analyzing those, but how to approach studying lines, your mentality when it comes to like taking bot fours and how to learn from that, how to do your line selection, how to like not be afraid of doing certain things, and yeah. Um, so just to start, I think like important thing in TFT is probably your study play split. A lot of people when they start off because TFT is so fun, they just play a bunch. And you probably realize that like if you only play TFT, then you can't really learn that much every game. You're kind of stuck in like a little bubble of yourself. Like you only see what you do. You can scout other people to see what they do, but it's only like restricted to whatever bracket that you're playing in. Um, you can also a lot of people like to watch streamers, and that's like the extent of a lot of studying for people. But there's tons of other stuff you can do, and there's a lot of time you can spend doing that. I think like in the game of TFT, there's so much thinking and decision making you have to do in your like 1 minute turns that it's kind of impossible unless you know a bunch and already did a bunch of thinking for yourself beforehand, right? Like knowing what augments are already good, knowing being familiar with roll down, when all your items come out on neutrals, knowing which ones to make and which ones to prioritize, what components to leave open. And all the studying that you do just makes it a lot easier to navigate the game when you actually get into those hard spots, right? So yeah, studying lines, itemization, augments, general mechanics, reading your games, everything here is important. And a lot of times if I like when I'm climbing, if my games are starting to feel repetitive, like I feel like I can only play like 2 or 3 comps or something. I don't really like see ways into other lines, and I'm just feeling kind of stuck. That might mean I'm just not like studying enough. I haven't actually like explored other lines or seen other angles. Maybe I didn't know that like a certain augment was OP, or I was like building the wrong item early game, and that was just kind of messing up the rest of my item economy. And yeah, and so whenever I get stuck, I usually just kind of like stop playing and go off to study. Um, I think like ideally like a 50-50 split with however much time you spend on TFT would be good. But if you have time limits and also you like playing TFT a lot, it's understandable if you only study like 25% of your time. But I really do think you can get like a lot of mileage off the study. So when you get into your games, I think it's like really easy to once you just play to climb to get LP. Like everyone usually has some kind of LP goal, whether it be like Emerald, Diamond, Masters, GM, Challenger, and so on. And also when you lose, like it feels pretty bad. You want to kind of get back that LP, and that's kind of like what you're focusing a lot on. But every game is really like an opportunity to learn, and especially the games that you go bot for are like the best opportunities to learn, right? And even if you like lost some LP or something, you'll probably gain more knowledge that will help you like get more LP in the future. The most efficient way to like gain LP in a short term is like often not actually that efficient way to learn. Like usually it's like spamming games, like one tricking like 1 or 2 comps, because it kind of keeps you in like this comfort zone. It's hard to make like super wrong decisions outside of line selection, but you'll learn a lot less just because like you're not exploring that many other things, and avoiding things that are like lines that are uncomfortable. It'll eventually like just kind of pigeonhole you into certain lines, and once you get to like a certain level where everyone is like playing a certain comp and it is hard to just play that every game, then you have to figure out how to be more flexible and play other things. I think also like just trying to play like spam out a bunch of games like might work in the short term, but like quality study time will really help in the long term. Not just just gaining LP in this set, but if you like actually build your fundamentals and think about like how all the different comps and units work together, then like over time you'll just get better get better at TFT from set to set. So yeah, and if you do that, I mean, the LP will come. I think like I have a lot of times where I'm just like not climbing at all, but I can feel myself improving. My students have also like reflected this, like they might be setting up the same like ELO masters for a while, but they're actually still thinking more about their augment selection and their line selection. It's just like really hard to put it all together to actually result in like higher placements because there's just so much to learn in TFT. But I promise you, like over time, like it'll be worth it. Okay, big thing about studying is like I would say trying to be more active in it. Like I said earlier, a lot of people just study by leaving like a stream on, maybe on the side, or just like watching it like passively while you're doing something, or just watching it live. Like I watch Wage and Iverson stream a lot, right? But then you're kind of just watching like things as they happen, right? Or you're playing a game and like things are just kind of happening, and then maybe something interesting happens and you pick up on it, right? I think when you're actively looking for things and wondering about like certain concepts or how to play certain lines, it'll actually like help you, like exercise your brain more to learn those things. So like if I'm actually trying to, for a tournament, say like get a lot better at learning about lines, I'll probably just go to VODs and watch them set up. I'll probably like select which games I want to play based on like if it's a comp that I care to learn about. Maybe I only want to learn about one comp right now, so I'll just like skip through some VODs until I see games with them, and then speed them up. Maybe skip to certain parts like augment selection, the roll down, what items they make, what they take at like the god selection, and I think doing that like is just a lot more efficient with your time and just helps you learn more than just like watching your live stream for like 5 hours. I think talking about the game like actively also does a lot to like make those connections in your brain, right? You can do that with like just a friend, someone that you play with, or of course like your coach. I tell all the people that I coach, if they have anything that they want to talk about or anything that they're like really interested in, then to tell me, because I think like it's great to learn how to do everything optimally, but if you do have a certain interest in a comp or just have more fun playing something, I think it helps you actually like play better and learn more, right? If you're curious about how to play around the cash out trait, like I said, is anima, or you just like don't know exactly like the fundamentals of how to play around reroll, like you should probably bring that up, right? Instead of like say you played a reroll game and you bring it to your coach or you review it and you try to look at like just specific areas. I think like having a discussion on like the theory and fundamentals of things can actually build your understanding a lot, that like informs all these small decisions that you might be making mistakes on. Like some coaching sessions I've just spent talking about the idea of playing contested, right? Which like I think for other people they just maybe say like ask a one-off question like, oh, if you're contested, like should you play this or should you not? But like it's a lot deeper than that, like as everything with TFT is. And yeah, I think talking about it is also just like a really fun experience, I think. So next is digging into stats, match histories, looking at tier lists. This is like how you figure out what is good, what is strong, comp wise, item wise. I think when you go look for this yourself, like instead of just like pulling up the tier lists as you're in the game, then it helps commit it more to memory, right? If you get into hard spots where you have to do like a hard transition, you'll just know the items better. It's also important to like say on tier lists and guides, usually they can only put like the BIS item set on a unit, but it's good to know like the alternative items. Like, can you put IE on Corki, or can you how bad is like GS versus Deathblade on Corki or something like that. You can dig into the stats, or like what I like to do sometimes is just go to the top players at the ladder, like Wagen or Disho, look at their match history, see what they've been playing, see how they're itemizing, and that kind of also skips the process of watching their stream sometimes. So you just want to get to know the idea of like what comps are good right now, right? And yeah, I think tailors are still a good like starting point to get this idea, but again, like just actively looking into it will help build that picture better in your head. And on top of that, I think writing your own game plan and tier lists and comp spreadsheets is actually helpful. Like of course, like your everyone's idea about what's good is gonna be like a little different, and you'll probably trust like the coaches and pro players more on what's good. But I think it's important to understand like what is good for you. Like you might not know how to play every single comp, which is fine. You should figure out what comps you're comfortable on, maybe what comps that you're not, what you should play from like a win streak or a loss streak opener, what you should play with AD or AP items, the conditions to play certain comps, like what augments that you should hit, and all that can really go down in like notes or game plan. And again, like that'll make it so that when you're in stage one or on 2-1, and you gotta pick something to do, right? Especially if you had to like scout around and make sure you're not contested. Then if you already have like that plan, written and preloaded into your head, then it's a lot easier to decide what to play. And I think like a lot of your placement comes from having a plan and selecting the right line. And just like doing that exercise yourself, I think can be really helpful. On top of tier lists, also like you can do tier lists for comps. I also think doing tier lists for like unit holds in stage 1 is good, like knowing what 1 cost and 2 costs are good. This goes directly back to like comps, right? So let's just say like Meeple was like a really strong comp. That would probably maybe make like Poppy and Vigar like S tier holds in stage 1. And it'll just like help you in those confusing spots where you can't buy every unit from the shop. You need to know what to hold. You need to know what's like a strong opener on stage 2 if you want to streak, or at least what plays into a strong line, right? Some units are going to be like kind of useless. Last set, like usually the Yordles were like pretty bad to buy, and if you ever like ask someone to make like a tier list of stage 1 unit holds, they probably put like the Yordles at the bottom. And yeah, I think doing all these things, forces you to decide what do you think is good, rather than just being told what is good, and that will just like help you like develop your own game sense for TFT. And I think that's like strong not just for being able to play a game, make your own decisions, but like from patch to patch, like when you see things change. I think a lot of people will get confused being like, oh, I don't know what's good anymore because everything got shaken up by the patch. Like there's not really much stats. The tier lists are in flux, But if you have like a good sense for actually like how strong something is, and you can read like the changes that happen in a patch, then you know what you can probably still play, and you also know what you can probably still like tempo through in the early game, and it'll leave you like a lot less jarred from the changes, I think. Cool. So in terms of studying, there's a lot of resources and tools out there, and I've like looked and used at all of these. I think going through all these just before you play like any games can be really useful. So just going down a list like stat sites, tactics, tools, meta, TFT, that really good for building a baseline of like what comps are good statistically, item builds, traits, units, boards, and so on. Guides and tier list sites are a pretty good baseline to just like again know about the tiers of comps, how to play them. I think there's like a bunch of good YouTube channels out there that you can watch either for gameplay, which I would probably watch like sped up, but depends on what you like, or just like skip through to important parts, right? Also, there's YouTube channels for like coaching, like I post my coaching VODs, like Brosive posts his too. Kai's gonna post this and other things related to this program. So you can also watch those, and like it really just helps you do a bunch of learning and thinking without having to play the game. And also like I think like doing the studying is nice because you don't have to be so stressed about like actually playing the game while you're still like getting all this information right. Yeah, I put YouTube twice, but yeah, Twitch and other streams, there's like plenty of streaming sites, especially if you like to watch players from other regions. I definitely spend my time watching streams and watching VODs a lot, just to know how to play certain lines. Replay tools, I think these are really important to use. Like you can use Outplay, you can record use CAT Academy, you can record it yourself using OBS. I think a lot of people use them to just like look at main decision points, but you can really do a lot. Like you can just rewatch fights over and over again. Like if I asked you like how a certain unit works, like exactly how I don't know, like Gwen works, because she's like really weird. Like would you know? I think like there's not that many games where you end up playing Gwen, right? at least right now. But like maybe there's something cool that you can do for positioning, or maybe you don't know why you lose certain rounds like Gwen. It's because you're like positioning her in a way that makes her die really easily. You can really, it's really easy to just learn how units like move throughout the fights and how their abilities work. Like Nunu is really weird right now with how his ability works. That's you can just get free watching fights, and I do that a lot, especially at the beginning of the set, to get familiar with all the units. Just to get better at positioning, knowing which units are useful as well. Um, Something the habit I do is like I open the damage charts a lot, and also the damage tank charts. Even if I'm not looking at them in the game, I can go back into the replay tool and look at them, because like in the end game, you don't, you might not be sure like is my Jin 1 stronger than my Xayah 2, or is Bar 2 or Sona 2 stronger, right? And you just want to check the damage between like multiple fights. Like you can also use the replay tool to do that. Something I've also done is like, look at what boards that you lose to or how other people are playing certain lines. I scout a lot during the game, or just like seeing where you fight. You can kind of get an idea of like what they succeeded with by seeing what's on the board, and yeah. Oh, another thing about replay tools is like, decisions that you make throughout the game. Like you might be at a 4-2 spot, maybe you like don't know what augment you should have chosen. It's like really uncomfortable that you don't know you should choose econ to hit your board, or combats. The thing is you're like kind of really low HP. It helps you like view your game more in context if you just go back and see like at what point did your game kind of go wrong. A lot of times it's like actually a very early decision in your game that like spiraled like your econ out of control, or your tempo, or maybe you just built a bad item and that messed up your item eco for the rest of the game. So I think looking at replays helps you kind of analyze like how each decision makes an impact to like 1 or 2 stages later in the game. In-game spectating, this one is I don't think anyone uses it that much. You have to like have people added on your friends list that's you'd like to learn from, but I do this sometimes. I just spectate other players just to like, it's kind of nice looking at every board and seeing the whole game in context rather than watching a stream where you only see like one POV. You can kind of predict like what boards or what lines are going to do well, and just kind of keep track of multiple games at once. TD Dojo is really cool. It's like they have a lot of puzzles for like stage 1 and stage 2, and then you can see what's you can like make the decisions and play out those stages and augment selections yourself, and then see what other people do. So it is really good for like fine-tuning your decision making in like the early game, right? Maybe like you've actually been just picking weak stage 2 augments or holding the wrong units in stage 1 the whole time, and if you just do some puddles and see what other people do, along with doing all the other things like discussing with other people or watching what like, pro players do, then yeah, you can learn a lot. And lastly, your coach. Your coach is probably your best source of information. You can literally ask them anything. Actually, your coach might know more what you don't know, but your coach can really probably explain to you any kind of concept or idea that you want. You could just wait for them to point out those things, but if there's anything that you're interested in, or maybe just like you want to ask about how you should study better and what your coach recommends, because they probably know you better than I do, then that's a good question too. Okay. A thing about queuing up, I set some rules for myself for both climbing and learning. I don't play when I'm tired. Sometimes it's the end of the day and you've had a long day from working or just playing a bunch or whatever, but you really want to play one more, and then you play, and then you get into a hard spots, and then like you go bot 4, and then you lost LP, and also you're too tired to even like learn anything from the game, or also you just played the game so poorly that like if you were actually awake you wouldn't have played it that way, so it becomes kind of like meaningless. Like you don't really gain anything from it, right? So if I'm tired, I'll like think twice if I should actually play again. It's probably better to just get some rest, play again tomorrow, or just go study instead. Maybe review your VODs or go watch some other people or check some stats. If you get tilted or stressed from a loss, like it's really easy to just re-queue up right away. But then you're gonna have this experience where you get into the next game and you're spending stage 1 thinking about your previous game, and you actually like mess up on holding a unit, or maybe you pick a certain augment just because you're tilted and you want to force a certain line. this will also make you just play like not like how you usually do, and it's gonna be harder to learn from that. So if you're just feeling like this, I would suggest just taking a small break, maybe figure out why you were tilted or stressed, and address that before queuing up again, right? A lot of people that I know, like just in between games on ladder or in tournament, will just get up, take a walk, get some water or something. And I think just taking like a few minutes to do that can really help you a lot, right? And playing when you don't have like a game plan. I think if you can't just go in and organically be like, I'm just gonna figure it out and play a tempo, but like if you do that, you might just make some really random decisions that you probably wouldn't have made if you just took a little bit of time to study and think about the lines. Like maybe you built an IE on stage 2, and then you're actually like, I'm not really sure what I'm actually supposed to play for this spot. I think if you studied and like say you want like realize that you should play Zaya or something, then you can actually get like a reasonable rep on that comp and understand the opener to play into that. So I usually recommend like my students, like I'll ask them like, so what is your plan going into this game? Especially if you're playing in like tournaments and stuff, you should have a pretty solid game plan of what lines you want to play from what spots. Like I said earlier, like loss streak, win streak, AD, AP, reroll, and so on. I think the set in particular, maybe knowing what lines are better with certain gods is also going to be useful. And yeah, TFT, it's already like really difficult to play, so learning while playing is going to be even harder. And if you just don't really feel good enough for whatever reason to play like a game, like a good game at your best, it's gonna be harder for you to learn from it. Like if I'm just feeling kind of tired or stressed, then I'm just gonna wait a bit until I feel better. And yeah, I think another thing is like, as long as I feel like, even if I lost a game, as long as I learn something from it and realize my mistakes and know I will like not make that again in the future, then I'll know that I still gained like something, right? So I think it's really good to have like a strong mentality when it comes to these things, and it'll help you not get tilted as much, and you'll actually end up being able to like play more and okay, on that topic, if you play spot 4 or just don't place very well, I would say for your games you should be thinking in terms of like max placements, not in like your goal is not to like top 4 every game or go 3rd or 1st. You should try to be getting your max placement given a spot, right? I think if everyone played the game perfectly, your placement should be decided by your RNG, right? Which is like not the case because TFT is super hard, so everyone has to make hard decisions. And like you have a theoretical max placement, but everyone will make some mistakes which take them further away from that, or good plays which bring them closer to it, right? If you can recognize in the lobby what your max placement could have been or what should be and what you need to do to get there, it doesn't really matter if it was like a 7th, a 6th, or 4th for like a 1st, right? You learned something, or at least you've gotten good practice. If I know that I did everything I could to get 5th from a bad spot, and maybe the only reason I went 5th was because like I had bad line selection at the beginning and that was like the main mistake, then I can like gladly move on from the game, right? Or like maybe I just know I screwed myself from like 2-1 and like my game's gonna be an 8 or something. If I can somehow play some tempo and salvage it to a 6, then I think that like feels really good. And like there's a lot of games where someone is completely just gonna take over and win the game, and you're really just playing for like 2nd or 3rd. And if you get that, then you pretty much like won the game yourself because you've done the most with what you were given, right? Yeah, I think like a good 6 can be more satisfying than a 2nd that should have been a 1st, because like good 6, I did everything I could. But sometimes you have like a game where you're just 1 round off like going 1st, but it was like a silly mistake or something. But again, as long as you like realize that like, oh, I could have gone 1st this game if I just did this, then next game, that the next time you're in that situation, then you'll actually be able to do that. Then you can more appreciate that that game that you just played. Okay. Oh yeah, I think I talked about this earlier. Using replays, so reveal all your impactful decisions, especially the ones that you weren't confident on. Sometimes you're at argument selection or item creation, and you're just like, I'm not sure what to do. I would say at least make sure to do something. Don't like freeze up. Do something that you can see yourself reasonably doing in like future games, right? Don't just pick like random augments. And then afterwards, you can pull up stats or guides, or ask someone like, "Hey, was this decision? Does this make sense? you can take all the time that you need to like pause and think about the reasoning behind like why you picked these augments or made these items, and that will help kind of reinforce like was this a good or bad decision. Like I said earlier, view your game in its entirety. Look at early decisions and how that affects the later parts of your game. They can usually be a lot more impactful than you think. Watching fights again and again so that you know what every unit does. Looking at boards that you beat or you lost to. This helps improve your board strength evaluation, which is going to be important because like ideally we want to know if we're going to win or lose to a board before we fight them. So we know like, oh, do I need to level or do I need to roll? Or do I need to make an item? Do I need to like change my positioning to beat this person? Doing that will help you more often like use your econ and items, right? If you can hold it, or you have to spend it to like keep your streak. Paying a lot of attention to the actual fights and how strong each unit is will just build this skill, and that actually provides like a lot of edge over time. Like you'll see some pro players like Setsuko can like 10 streak off like what appears to be a really weak board, but it's because he's like just strong enough in terms of unit strength and positioning to beat everyone in his pool, and he's like scouting enough to know like, oh, do I actually need to like roll for this pair, or do I actually need a level or make an item? Yeah, and again, like check if you're playing your strongest board or your weakest board every round. Sometimes you might just like pass over a unit in the shop that actually would have made your board stronger. Or maybe you're trying to sack and someone griefs your loss streak. Maybe there's a way to be weaker or position better to keep your loss streak. I make a habit to like always look at my shop to see what's in it. Maybe like a lot of times it could be a decision that snowballed. Like maybe you should have held a unit in the previous round in case you hit a unit in a later round. Like say I'll hold a pike on my bench if it doesn't cost me anything, because if I hit like a Gragas in the next shop, then it would give me a Psionic, which will give me another item, right? Stuff like that you can see a lot easier if you just go through in the replay. Okay, this is like using a Smurf. This is like not, I guess, the friendliest thing to ladder, but it is important sometimes. I said earlier, like sometimes you're tired, but you really want to play. That probably won't turn out well. If you don't want to lose LP, if you just like, just want to play, I would suggest using a Smurf. Sometimes people need to sit for like snapshots or something, then a Smurf would be good. Or you just want to try out like new lines, or just have some fun. Like you want to play a line that like is fun, but not actually good. Then using Smurf's good, or I guess you can queue a normal game. But yeah, I mean, TFT is super fun, and it's important to have fun while playing. And I think if you want to like still be competitive and play for your LP and your goals and stuff, then using a Smurf will help. This can actually save time because like you can say you really want to play more and you queue on your main, and then you lose, and then like it tilts you, and then you want to queue more to make the LP back, and that can like kind of spiral out of control. Back when I started playing more than like competitively in set 8 and set 9, I used to play on a Smurf, and I would just climb them simultaneously and just play on which one was like lower LP. And I think this helped me a lot with stress and let me focus a lot more on learning. And it takes definitely takes more time investments at the beginning, so it's not for everyone if you don't have that much time to like build them up to the same rank. But I think like the time that I saved from just being less stressed and being able to learn more and being able to make more out of my games and get more LP eventually when like the Smurfs both like catch up to each other, actually made it so like I was just playing like less games and learning more in the long run, right? Like you can see here, like my 2 accounts combined have like 400 games, and the people up here, some of them definitely have more than 400 games. So yeah. Okay, this one has a lot of text. Just like more talking about what to focus on when you're playing. I think it's important to think in lines and packages, not just comps. Like not just like, oh, I want to play this comp, I'm gonna load up the planner and roll for this on like 4-2 or on 3-1. Over the course of the set, balance will change. Certain comps are probably gonna change. Like maybe there'll be a Zai comp, but it'll change between what tanks that you run or how many Stargazers that you run. Their general goal is usually to push towards more flexible play, so you can play around different packages. You don't always have to play a set board. And like I think that happened last set. Things got really flexible in terms of AP at the end, and It's probably because there were so many units, but it's also because it was like definitely better balance, right? So you could carry multiple units in stage 4 with like the same kind of items, and you can only do that if you get really familiar with how strong each unit is individually, what traits they need to succeed, um, and like what items are good on all of them, right? Um, and so, just outside of just like copying the builds or whatever, you should watch like, oh, is like how strong is TF with like Nashers versus Shojin, or just even with like a Rage Blade, right? Can't even build like Rage Blade on TF right now. I think like Rage Blade is actually probably serviceable on TF. I've just tried it because I thought I needed to for tempo, and it became fine. And I realized I could just like transfer it to Caitlyn later, right? Um, and if I didn't, if you don't try that, you might get stuck being like, oh, I have a bow and a rod. The build says I need a greed for like Nashor's death cap, so I just can't slam on ITF right now. But you actually end up losing like a lot of tempo, right? So just trying stuff out and seeing how like how strong a unit can be, even as like slightly weaker, is really important. Again, also it's like the level 8 boards that we really want to play. A big challenge is just getting there, and to do that, you have to know how strong each of like the 1, 2, and 3 costs are. To like play a tempo board, right? Some games you're going to be playing Gnar as your AD item holder. Some games you're going to be playing Samira or Kaisa. Some of them are not so good with certain items. Some of them might be better with items that you don't expect, right? And if I don't know for certain if like a unit is strong, I might just try it on my board just to see. It's better to know so that you'll have that option in the future if you like really do need to actually play for a streak or something, or like save HP. And yeah, I think if you focus on this stuff, you'll just generally be able to play stronger openers, keep stronger boards throughout the game. Transitioning between carries is really important. So like I think the 3 costs this set are pretty strong. Like say you're trying to play some AP comp, you can probably stay on like Victor carry for a while, right? Or maybe for the rest of the game. But eventually you want to like you want to figure out like, oh, like at what point can I stop rolling on level 8 and go 9, or like is it actually worth it to roll on level 7? Will it actually stabilize me for like a few rounds so I can go level 8 later? And this really helps when you're like kind of poor or you contested, right? Because you kind of have to like scrap together what you can, and it'll really help you like inch out placements from difficult spots, I think. And yeah. For those interested in tournaments, I think all the stuff that I've talked about, still applies to how you should learn and prepare. Um, when I prepare for a tournament, I try to learn a lot to create like a solid game plan. Like I said, just knowing what lines I want to play, also knowing what lines I don't want to play and avoid. And when I actually get to the tournament, I will stick to that list of lines. Try my best not to like cook something up. Maybe sometimes you have to, but ideally you're already familiar or confident in what you're going to play going into the tournament every game. Yeah, that's all a game plan means. You know how to pick your line every game and how those lines generally play out in cap, so you kind of understand what placements you're playing for. Your spot is good or bad. You like sometimes tournaments you just make it to the next day by going fourth like 6 times in a row, right? And making the decision to play for fourth or play for first has to do with if you understand how well your comp caps, how strong it is in stage 4 or stage 3. And if you like don't understand that, you might end up like stacking to go 9 and then just dying out anyway, right? Once you have like your game plan set, you can just go practice that and adjust if you has any issues or you realize like a comp sucks or something. This will go more into focusing on like your fundamentals and mechanics, like knowing how to do the roll downs, knowing like alternative item builds, knowing how strong you are on like 1 star, like say you're playing Nova or something. I think like 1 star Master Yi is actually pretty strong, and maybe like you have 1 star Master Yi and 2 star Kindred, and you have like a certain set of items. Like it's actually maybe better to put the items on Master Yi because he just does like way more damage, right? Having this depth on the line will just help you, be better at managing your resources and like cap out higher, and just play more comfortably in the game, right? You really don't want to get in a spot in a tournament where you're like really confused and you're frozen trying to think. I think in those moments you probably like can't position as well. You might not be able to spend as much time like thinking about the augments or your items, right? And you might just like throw away certain rounds because you couldn't like pull off the transition or like the unit swap in time. And yeah, some questions, I would check when reviewing my games, my tournament games, like did I win every fight I was supposed to? Check for positioning differences. Maybe you just need to roll a little bit more, or you didn't get your items on in time, or you picked the wrong augment earlier, like you didn't pick the right combat augments or something. Or maybe you're just like playing the wrong board, right? Check if you're too greedy on your slams. Sometimes you are greeting certain items when you should have slammed like a suboptimal item, right? Sometimes it's like the other way around. Maybe you slammed too many trash items and you ended up falling off. Just reanalyzing your fights for that is important. Again, checking if you know how to position. Can really be a big swing, especially if you're playing like melee comps, like around like Akali, Belveth, Tree, Riven, and so on. And yeah, knowing how to win from a good spot. I think like, TFT, like placing well in TFT is like two different skills. One is like how to close out a game from a good spot. If you're like totally win streaking through the game, usually say you 10 streak into stage 4, you're probably going to be like top 4 or top 5 already. But like, how do you actually go first from that spot? That's not something that you get into often just because it's like hard to streak that much. But like learning about how to cap your comp, how to properly like read your gold can be really important, which you can get from, both reviewing how other people play and reviewing your own VODs. And the other skill would be like how to salvage like a bad spot, right? Say you just couldn't get a streak going, you're just low HP going into your roll down. How do I like inch out some fights so that I can get one more placement? In tournaments, like every placement really matters. The difference between going 8th and going 7th is like double the amount of points. And I've had like so many tournaments where I was just 1 point off moving to the next day. So like it really like comes down to a lot of small mistakes that kind of add up. Sometimes it could just be one round, and like this might not like feel that impactful say on ladder when it's like, oh, the difference between like a 4th and a 3rd is like 7 LP or something. But in tournaments, you really want to play for every placement that you can and get every point that you can. So really every edge matters there.